Mic check. 1, 2, 1, 2. Are y'all ready?
Yeah.
Are y'all ready?
Yeah.
Y'all ready?
Yeah.
Press play.
Jesus, we know we belong here because of your love for us that goes on and on forever. Jesus, we know you are with us wherever we go. You're there, we'll always be together.
So sing along with me for all the joy he brings.
It's going down. Get in the mix.
We're not stopping.
Get in the
The
mix.
party's hopping.
Get in the mix.
Everybody say it's time to press play.
Get in the
The
mix.
beat is dropping.
Get in the mix.
Feet are stomping.
Get in the mix.
Everybody say it's time to press play.
Oh, oh, oh.
Press play.
Oh, oh, oh.
Press play.
Jesus, we know we belong here because of your love for us that goes on and on forever. Jesus, we know you are with us wherever we go. You're there, we'll always be together.
So sing along with me for all the joy he brings.
It's going down. Get in the mix.
We're not stopping.
Get in the
The
mix.
party's hopping.
Get in the mix.
Everybody say it's time to press play.
Get in the
The
mix.
beat is dropping.
Get in the mix.
Feet are stomping.
Get in the mix.
Everybody say it's time to press play.
Oh, oh, oh.
Press play.
Oh, oh, oh.
Press play.
Oh, oh.
Press play.
Oh, oh.
Press play. All right, all right, all right. We're gonna break it down one time, y'all. You gotta sing it out with all you got. Y'all ready? Come on, come on. Clap your hands like this. Have confidence to get in the mix. Clap your hands like this. Have confidence to get in the mix. Now clap your hands like this. Like this. Have confidence to get in the mix. Now clap your hands like this. Like this. Everybody get in the mix.
Get in the mix.
We're not stopping.
Get in the
The
mix.
party's hopping.
Get in the mix.
Everybody say it's time to press play.
Get in the
The
mix.
beat is dropping.
Get in the mix.
Feet are stomping.
Get in the mix.
Everybody say it's time to press play.
Oh, oh. Get in the mix.
Press play.
Oh, oh. Get in the mix.
Press play.
Oh, oh.
Press play. Press play.
Hey everyone, I'm Graham, and I'm here to give you a little bit of confidence. Confidence is learning to see yourself the way God sees you. When you're confident, you don't just sit around waiting for something to happen. No, when there's a game to be played, you get off the bench and play. When there's a challenge to be met, you face it head on. When there's music to be played, you get in the mix, grab an instrument, and make some noise. See what I mean? Confidence. Believe it or not, some people think the triangle isn't that important of an instrument. The band could get along just fine without it. But we know better, don't we? I mean, how else would you know when someone on TV had a good idea? Or how would you know when someone had the right answer on a game show? The answer is the Yangtze River. And of course, who can forget the dinner bell? Come and get it! Sometimes something that doesn't seem important can make a big difference. And in today's story, we'll see how God used someone who didn't think he was important. And that someone's name was Gideon? Right, Gideon. See you in a bit.
The Bible. It's 66 books of history, stories, letters, and poetry that fit together to form God's one big story. The epic adventure of how He created us and loves us so much that He made a way to rescue us. As we travel through the Bible, From Genesis to Revelation, we discover people who met God and found their lives changed forever. Now, for an amazing story, inspired by the book of Judges, chapters 6 through 8.
As many times before, the Israelites turned away from God. He allowed the Midianites to take over their land. God's people hid out in caves. When they tried to grow plants or tend to livestock, the Midianites would show up and destroy their crops and animals. At last, the Israelites cried out to God for help. He heard them and sent the angel of the Lord to a man named Gideon, who was threshing grain in a winepress.
Mighty warrior, the Lord is with you.
All Gideon could do for a moment was stop and stare.
Pardon me, sir. You said the Lord is with us? Then why has all this happened? The Lord has deserted us.
You are strong. Go and save Israel from the power of Midian. I am sending you.
Pardon me, sir, but how can I possibly save Israel? My family is the weakest in the tribe, and I'm the least important member.
I will be with you.
Even with a direct message from the Lord, Gideon was still nervous about the whole thing.
Give me a special sign. Then I'll know it's really you talking to me.
So God gave Gideon a sign, sending fire to burn up meat and bread. God's spirit was with Gideon. And when the Midianites and the Amalekites gathered to attack, Gideon sounded a trumpet for the Israelites to follow him. But even as the army gathered, Gideon once again pleaded to God for another sign. God responded by letting dew fall on a fleece, and then on the next day, only on the ground surrounding it.
Okay, I've got it. Thank you.
At last, Gideon was convinced God wanted to use him. He camped with 32,000 men at the spring of Harod and prepared for battle. Here, God spoke again.
I want to hand Midian over to you, but you have too many men.
Too many?
Israel might brag, my own strength has saved me. Announce to the army, those who tremble with fear can turn back.
Gideon did just as the Lord instructed.
There, Lord. 22,000 men have gone home. Only 10,000 left to fight.
There are still too many men.
Have you seen the Midianite army?
Take the men down to the water. There I will reduce the number of them for you.
Even though it must have worried Gideon to lose more of his army, he did just as the Lord said.
Field trip to the lake, everyone!
At the water's edge, the Lord said,
Some men will drink the way dogs do. They will lap up the water with their tongues. Separate them from those who get down on their knees to drink.
Gideon watched carefully. Most men got on their knees and drank directly from the water, but 300 men cupped the water in their hands and lifted them to their mouths to lap.
So, God, I send those 300 men home and keep the other 9,700, right?
With the help of the 300 men who lapped up the water, I will save you. Let all the other men go home.
Okay. Yes.
Gideon sent home every single person in the army except those 300 men.
Get some sleep. Tomorrow we will figure out what's next.
That night, the Lord spoke to Gideon once more.
Get up.
What? I'm awake.
Gideon stumbled out of his tent. Below, the campfires and torches of the enemy armies covered the entire valley.
So many. Like a swarm of locusts.
Go down to the camp. Listen to what they are saying. After that, you will not be afraid to attack.
Wondering if he might be dreaming, Gideon snuck down the mountain to hover in the shadows at the edge of the camp. He could hear voices from a nearby tent.
I had a dream. A round loaf of barley bread came rolling into the camp. It hit the tent with great force and knocked it flat.
Wow, but that can only be the sword of Gideon from Israel. God has given him the whole camp.
Gideon listened in shock.
Wow, God. Thank you.
At once, Gideon scrambled back up the hill to the Israelite camp.
Get up. Get up. The Lord has handed the Midianites over to you.
Quickly, Gideon separated the 300 men into 3 groups and handed each one a trumpet and a clay jar with a torch inside.
Watch me. Do what I do. I'll go to the edge of the enemy camp. Then we'll blow our trumpets from all around the camp and shout, "For the Lord and for Gideon!"
Gideon and his men headed quietly down the slope, fanning out in groups to surround the vast enemy camp.
Okay, get ready.
As soon as Gideon sounded his trumpet, he smashed his jar so the torch shone brightly. The other 300 men did the same.
For the Lord! A sword for the Lord! Gideon!
The Israelites held their ground, but their enemies panicked, confused by the trumpets and bright lights that pierced the dark night.
They're coming from everywhere!
The enemy armies were so confused, they began to fight each other, and then they fled in fear.
After the men!
Gideon and the Israelites chased their enemies all the way to the Jordan River and beyond until all the enemy armies were destroyed. The Israelites begged Gideon to rule over them.
I will not rule over you. The Lord will rule over you.
Yep, Gideon was an underdog, filled with doubt, but he still chose to follow God, and God used him to save the Israelites.
According to Gideon, he was the least important family member and the weakest family of his tribe. He certainly didn't think God would use him to lead an army to victory over their enemies, but sometimes God uses people who don't seem important to make a big difference. You see this all through the Bible. Think of Jesus. He didn't pick the strongest, smartest, and most holy people to be his 12 closest friends. He picked regular guys, fishermen and tax collectors to be his disciples, and they went on to make a huge difference in the world. Hey, maybe that means God can use someone like me too, or someone like you. We don't have to know everything. We don't have to be important. God can do big things through us. Maybe he can use you to help a friend who's having a bad day. Maybe he can use you to solve a problem in your community. Or you might invent something that's never existed before. You might not think you're that important, and you might not think you're ready to make any kind of big difference. But the truth is, God thinks you're important, and he's totally ready to use you for something amazing. That's the one thing to remember today. God can use you no matter what. Knowing that should give you a little confidence. Why is my mouth watering? Oh, must be dinner time. I'll see you around.
Okay, stop me if you've heard this one before. A pastor, a priest, and a rabbit walk into a bar. And the rabbit says, I think I'm a typo.
Dang, we didn't get to hear that joke here in the studio. So Chris, next time I see you, I'm gonna have to ask you what that joke was. Because apparently Christina is telling us off camera that it was a classic.
Joke.
That was good. What was it?
It was a priest, a rabbi, and a rabbit walk into a bar.
A priest, a rabbit, and a rabbi walk into a bar.
And the rabbit says, I think I'm a typo.
And the rabbit says, I think I'm a typo.
That's a good one.
That's too intelligent for my dad joke humor. But we are celebrating Father's Day, so happy Father's Day, everybody! Welcome to Oasis. Yes. Crystal and I have dad jokes, and we're going to kick off this week's weekly challenge by telling each other dad jokes. What you don't know is that I actually wrote Crystal's dad joke, so she's going to get a laugh at both of them. It'll be wonderful. So why don't you start?
Which computer has the best voice?
Which computer has the best voice? I don't know.
Adele.
Adele. That was awesome. That was an amazing dad joke. Here's mine. What do you call it when a snowman throws a tantrum?
What?
A meltdown.
Sure.
A meltdown. And that brings us to this week's weekly challenge, which was dad jokes because it's Father's Day. So what we're going to do is Crystal's going to read the setup of all the ones that you guys submitted, and then I will read the punchline, right?
You ready?
Just about.
Okay. Susan Ransom submitted, I went bald, but I still kept my comb.
Because I just couldn't part with it.
Classic. Good one, Susan.
That's solid.
Good one.
That's solid. Very good.
But it's a mom joke.
It is a mom joke, and that's okay. We love moms too.
Mom does mom jokes.
Yeah. Sometimes mom humor is a little bit fancier than dad humor.
Susan also said, why do seagulls fly over the sea?
Because if they flew over the bay, they would be bagels.
Good one. I like that
classic.
one. All right, another Susan. A graveyard of musicians is where?
Everyone decomposes.
Oh, good one.
Nice.
I like that one.
Again, a little more fancy than your typical dad joke.
Dear Algebra.
Stop asking us to find your ex. She's not coming back, and we don't know why. That's solid.
Good.
I like that one a lot.
Classic.
That's very good. It's got an interesting angle to it.
Oh, I see what you did there. I see what you did there.
I'm earning my pay tonight, baby.
All right, Bill Shannon submitted Where Do the Sith Shop, which is a little bit of a tongue twister as well as a dad joke.
It is. It's a Star Wars reference.
Right.
And obviously they shop at the mall where everything's half off. Yes, because Darth Maul.
I got it.
Yes, and the Qui-Gon Jinn.
I got it.
With,
Lost his legs.
Yes, it was. It's great. We'll reenact that later.
Maybe not. Katie Bearden, is your refrigerator running?
Then you better go catch it.
Classic.
A classic. I tried that once when I was a kid, prank calling, because I heard it was, the thing to do. When I was in like 3rd grade, and I was so nervous I couldn't finish the joke, and I just hung up really quick.
That's why we get all these robocalls now, is all of you
It was probably me. Had I been able to finish that joke.
Payback.
Yeah.
All right, next one was from your dad, Dennis. So this is a classic dad joke.
Yes, it
Why
is.
can't a leopard hide?
Because he's always spotted.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good one. Next one is from Randy. Randy had a couple of good zingers.
He did.
He was keeping us going all week. I bet you didn't know that I have a pen that can write underwater.
But it can also write other words as well.
Good one. Then he said, how do you get a farm girl to like you?
A tractor.
I like that one. I was driving down the street.
When I noticed that a man in the crosswalk had dropped his game of Scrabble and the pieces went everywhere. And so I stopped and got out and I asked him, what's the word on the street? Which is how I greet everybody.
You do say that a lot.
Which is great.
Yeah.
So thanks for the dad jokes to everybody.
That was fun.
Those are always enjoyable. I love a good dad joke. Chris, I really want to hear you tell yours, because I'm sure your delivery was phenomenal. But this next week, the weekly challenge is all of your Father's Day celebrations.
Okay.
So whatever you did for Father's Day, probably barbecued something, I would assume, went to church, set up your new 55-inch television at home, Randy, which I hope you're enjoying. Whatever you did to celebrate your dads or the men in your life who are fathers, even cat fathers or dog fathers,
Sure.
which apparently are a thing. We'd love to see it. So submit your pictures, tag it with hashtag, and we will check in on those next week. Yep. Now on to
Announcements.
our official announcements, which I don't remember, so that's why we have these cards.
You're up first.
Join us live. You can join us live in the studio. It's easier than ever. Jump on oasissalem.com/in-person, fill out the little questionnaire, and you can jump in and hang out with us here in the studio. Next week, we are going to be changing things up a little bit extra. A couple of surprises for you that we're looking forward to. Did a little bit. We didn't do a little bit. Adriel moved some stuff today in preparation for that, so we're excited for what the future has for us here down at the studio. So if you want to jump in next week live, it would be a great time to do so. oasissalem.com/in-person.
To sign up.
That's right.
Just a reminder about women's meetups at the Riverfront on the 2nd and 4th Mondays from 6:30 to 7:30, weather permitting, of course. But we'd love to have you join women the 2nd and 4th Mondays of the month.
Yep. Weather was not permitting this last week.
Correct.
It was pouring down rain. But this week, it's like 1,000,000 degrees. So welcome to early summer in Salem.
But it's not the 4th Monday, so.
It's not. Next week is supposed to be 1,000,000
degrees
as
also,
well.
so I guess it's the same
It'll
thing.
be awesome. Family Camp is coming up July 15, 16, 17, and 18. So if you have not signed up for that, jump on oasissalem.com/familycamp. All the registration info, how to sign up, what to expect, what to bring, what not to bring. All of the info is right on there, and we would love to see you down at Triangle Lake. It's going to be incredible. It's been 2 years since we were down there as a church, and I'm stoked.
The boys
to
are
get
getting
back.
really excited.
Anaya, are you stoked for Family Camp? It's going to be awesome.
I'll take that as a yes.
I'm pumped.
Zoe's excited.
It's going to be very good. Last announcement is giving. Thank you for continuing to support the ministry of Oasis here in the Valley and in the wonderful world of the internet. Thank you guys. We love you. All the different ways are down at the bottom third, and that brings us to tonight's scripture that Crystal's going to be reading to us out of the book of Ezekiel.
Ezekiel, chapter 11. And I will give them singleness of heart and put a new spirit within them. I will take away their stony, stubborn heart and give them a tender, responsive heart.
All right, we're going to pray, and then grade school kids, you guys are dismissed, and we'll jump into some worship. Heavenly Father, thank you for this evening. Thank you for Father's Day and the men in our lives that do a great job of reflecting your love to us. We ask, Lord, that our time together tonight would be honoring to you, that we would not only feel more connected to you, but with each other, and then at the end of our time, we would be able to see the world just a little bit more like you do, that we would be able to be a little bit more like you created us to be. We ask all these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Kiddos, you...
Through the eyes of men, it seems there's so much we have lost. As we look down the road where all the prodigals have walked, one by one the enemy has whispered lies and let them off as slaves. But we know that you are God, yours is the victory. We know there is more to come that we may not yet see. So with the faith you've given us, we step into the valley unafraid. We call out to dry bones, come alive, come alive. We call out to dead hearts, come alive, come alive. Up out of the ashes, let us see an army rise. us back the wayward sons. And by your Spirit, breathe upon them. Show the world that you alone can save. You alone can save. And we call out to dry bones, come alive, come alive. And we call out to dead hearts, come alive, come alive. Up out of the ashes, let us see an army rise. We call out to dry bones, come alive. Breathe the breath of God, now breathe the breath of God. Breathe the breath of God, now breathe. So breathe the breath of God, now breathe the breath of God. Breathe the breath of God, now breathe. And we call out to dry bones, come alive, come alive. And we call out to dead hearts, come alive, come alive. Up out of the ashes, let us see an army rise. And we call out to dry bones, come alive. We call out to dry bones, come alive. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. I worship Your holy name. The sun comes up, it's a new day dawning. It's time to sing Your song again. Whatever may pass and whatever lies before me, let me be singing when the evening comes. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. I'll worship Your holy name. You're rich in love and You're slow to anger. Your name is great and Your heart is kind. For all Your goodness I will keep on singing. 10,000 reasons for my heart to find. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. I'll worship Your holy name. And on that day when my strength is failing, the end draws near and my time has come, still my soul will sing Your praise unending. 10,000 years, then forevermore. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before.
I was 8 years old when the largest medical research collaboration in the history of humanity was started. 20 research facilities across the entire globe came together to work on an unprecedented level. It was 1990, and scientists who were working in this field of genetics were doing what all scientists do who are great scientists. They were standing on the shoulders of the people that came before them, and they were reaching just a little bit further in their particular field. Because 35 years earlier, the double helix of DNA was discovered for the first time in the mid-50s. And in the 1990s, something incredible happened. On a global scale, the Human Genome Project was undertaken, and the goal was to map the entirety of the human genome. All of the billions and billions of pieces of code were systematically chopped up and sequenced and put back together and put into this massive database that would be shared with the entire world for free. It was quite the undertaking, something that nobody even knew was going to be possible because nobody even knew that it was a thing just a couple of generations before. And then in the year 2000, President Bill Clinton, in a joint press conference with Prime Minister Tony Blair, announced that the Human Genome Project had been an overwhelming success, that they had reached their goal and that the majority of the human DNA had been sequenced. And it was amazing. Now, in 1990, I was in third grade, and I don't remember my third grade teacher, Mrs. Childs, mentioning to me that this Human Genome Project had been kicked off, but it was. And when I graduated high school, I don't remember watching President Clinton or Prime Minister Tony Blair announcing that they had completed this project, but they did. But I do remember in 1993 being introduced and taught all about DNA. Everything that I currently know, actually, about DNA and how dinosaurs were made by Dr. John Hammond and his trusty sidekick, Mr. DNA, thanks to the blockbuster Jurassic Park. And I think practically that's how all of it works. You just, get some amber and you pull some blood and poof, you've got whatever you want. The reality is that DNA is very, very complicated. But because of some amazing work done by science and scientists and people that are really gifted, really, really gifted, I believe by God, to unlock mysteries that weren't even known to be in existence, let alone how to unlock them just a few generations ago, there have been unbelievable strides in the realm of medical science. Now, we're in this series that I've been trying, at least, to give us a little bit grander, a little bit broader, and a little bit more positive insight into what is going on in the world, what God is doing in the world. Because I don't know about you, but I've been noticing that much of the news coverage that I see, whether it's actual news on the television or the radio or something you read in the paper or, heaven forbid, the news that you get from social media, tends to be a little bit negative. And that means that we miss out on some of the amazing things that are happening. And I believe that God is continually at work in the world, whether or not we hear about it on the news, because God didn't stop working when Scripture was canonized thousands of years ago. We're now seeing the ways in which God has been working, at least in the medical field, in very practical ways. And so tonight I want to give us just a little bit of a glimpse into some of the amazing advancements that have been happening and take a look back and hopefully partner those with the amazing medical achievements that Jesus was able to partake in while he was here on earth. And how that shows us what God was doing, maybe what God is doing, and hopefully what God has in store for all of us. Now, the Human Genome Project was a very big undertaking. It was kind of one of those moonshots that nobody really knew if it was actually possible or how much it would cost. But it ended up costing about $5 billion, or at least the equivalence when you gather up everything that was spent by all the 20 different research facilities across the globe. But it wasn't fully completed until 3 weeks ago. It was announced in 2000 that they had kind of completed the project, but there was still a little bit of stuff left to do. But they had gotten pretty much everything that they thought was really important out of the project. But 3 weeks ago, it was announced that they had finished the final 1/10 of 1% of the human genome. I don't even really know what that means, but it was impressive and worth a TED Talk. So I watched it and it was fascinating. The interesting thing is that what came out of this Human Genome Project, we are just now on the very tip of the iceberg of beginning to understand what's even possible with this kind of knowledge, the building blocks of what it means to physically create a human. And back in 2012, a very interesting and possibly catastrophically terrifying discovery was made when a scientist was working with some bacteria and found that they had this very interesting way of dealing with viruses. That they would take a little bit of this DNA from this virus and that would help them hunt down that virus and break apart the DNA of that virus, therefore rendering it neutral and non-harmful to the bacteria. They call this, in a very long acronym that I can't fully pronounce or haven't memorized, but the short version is CRISPR. And CRISPR is this fascinating technology that they have now taken, and I say they, I really mean just scientists that know what they're talking about because I don't. They've taken this technology and they've been able to implement it in anything that has DNA. The ability to go in and just like when, probably not just like, but the analogy that's often used is when you're working with a word processor, you can find and replace a word. I don't want that word, I actually want to swap it for this word. In a similar fashion, they can do this with DNA, finding specific chunks, specific codes that they would like to take out and either replace, edit, or fully and completely delete from that DNA. Not only changing that organism, but all organisms that will be born or created from that organism from that point forward. Now, the implications of this are really exciting and mind-blowingly terrifying. Anything that has DNA, in theory, could be affected by CRISPR. And there are all kinds of doomsday sayers out there and all kinds of people that think this is just going to be the next massive miracle that changes humanity as we know it. But the basic idea is that you can take any organism that has DNA and genetically engineer it. You could tweak it. You could take a mosquito and change its DNA so that it is no longer susceptible to diseases that a human would fall ill to, like malaria, and it will no longer transfer malaria to humans. You could take it to crops and you could make them larger, more nutritious, more disease resistant, more sustainable. You could even take it to humans, and parents could create designer babies, is the hip term. You could choose hair color, eye color, how fast they'd be able to run, how intelligent they might be. Governments could do all kinds of fun things with the next generation. In fact, in 2018, a scientist in China successfully edited 3 human embryos, and they were born with genetically modified DNA using CRISPR technology so that they would be immune to HIV. He was just sentenced to 3 years in a Chinese prison and fined hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I wouldn't want to be that guy right now. But this is such brand new technology that there really isn't any regulation on it. They don't know what it's capable of doing, let alone how to regulate it, how to stop it, what should and shouldn't be done. Those conversations are just now taking place. But it has an unfathomable ability to change life, not just human life, but all life as we know it in the next couple of decades. Really, really interesting stuff that's on the horizon. But it's not just DNA that has been advancing at a rapid pace. There are all kinds of different areas in medical science that have been pushed. The envelope just opened a little bit further in the last couple of decades. 3D bioprinting is a fascinating one that we're just now beginning to touch on. The ability for scientists to take human cells and 3D print cartilage, organs, skin, muscle, tissue, all kinds of stuff. Scientists in Israel in 2019 3D printed using human cells a heart the size of a rabbit's heart, but it was made out of 3D printed human cells. I don't even know what that means, but it's bananas. Very interesting, kind of terrifying, but really fascinating stuff is going on. The stuff that right now sounds like science fiction, the fact that your open heart transplant in 10 years might not be somebody else's heart. It might be your heart that was grown using your cells in a lab somewhere is possible. Just a few decades ago, open heart surgery was insane. It was just on the cutting edge. In fact, my dad today was telling me that one of the very first medical calls that he ran when he was a new firefighter back in 1980 was an elderly gentleman who had fallen, and while getting his medical history, he mentioned that he had had open heart surgery 20 years before, so in 1960, which would have been some of the first run at open heart transplants. Something that was not common at all back then. And now to us is no big deal. You're in the hospital for a few days, you come home, you take an aspirin every day for the rest of your life, and most people are totally fine. 98% survival rate. Bananas. Things that would have killed our grandparents when they were children are now pretty commonplace. I was at a prayer meeting a few days ago, Tuesday, I think, of this last week, and a couple was talking about their grandson who was a few weeks old at this point, and he was born weighing just less than 3 pounds. And the doctors are expecting a full and healthy life for this baby. That wasn't possible just a few years ago. The advances in technology have been really impressive. My grandmother had a massive heart attack in 1990, and over the next 15 years of her life, due to a cocktail of all kinds of medications that were constantly being tweaked and changed, and 37 ambulance rides to the ER, she was able to come to our wedding in 2005, 15 years after her first heart attack. A couple of generations before, and that would have been it. That was unheard of, and now pretty common. Things that were medically science fiction are now within reach, if not commonplace. But it's not just advancements like that. It's also advancements in neuroscience that are, pardon the pun, but it is Father's Day, mind-blowing. Elon Musk has a company that he started in 2019. I know, he's got a million companies. The guy's doing all kinds of stuff. I don't know how he sleeps at night, but probably on a pile of giant cash. Lots and lots of cash. But he started this company called Neuralink, and Neuralink is designed to be a brain-machine interface, a BMI. And they have developed a microchip about the size of a quarter that replaces a chunk of your skull, and then thousands of microscopic electrodes are robotically placed in your brain up to about 20 millimeters deep, and they're 1/10 the size of a human hair. And they interface with your brain wirelessly with anything that has Bluetooth. In fact, in order to learn how to use this new brain-machine interface, there's an iPhone app that you use your brain to move your phone, and you train yourself how to use this thing. And they're just on the cusp of doing human trials on this. The idea is to fix all kind of neurological issues, right? Paralysis or blindness or deafness or any number of things that are caused by brain injuries. And then eventually be an interface between you and your phone or anybody else that has one of these, or the internet, or any machine that has Bluetooth, and be able to just think something and it happens. There's a really interesting video of a monkey playing Pong with his brain, not touching anything, while he's drinking orange juice, because apparently they love orange juice. It's incredible what is happening on the forefront of technology. A little weird, kind of creepy and scary, like watching an old episode of Doctor Who. But there are unbelievable things happening in the world of medicine. It is going to be an interesting next 10, 20, 50 years on our planet. And I don't know what's coming, but I know that looking back at what has happened, I mean, even just in my lifetime, it seems like the acceleration of advancement is just going exponential. And I don't know what that means for us as a human race, let alone a community of faith. But I do think that this ancient book does have something to say about that. And Jesus seemed to be really into this whole medicine thing, at least the healing part. And he didn't do it with microchips or DNA or RNA or CRISPR or any of that kind of stuff. But tonight I want to spend a little bit of time talking about a few of the instances where we see Jesus jumping into the lives of people and completely rocking their worlds. And I don't know about you, but I always find myself asking questions when I read the Gospels. I have a lot of questions that pop into my head. And so I want to ask a couple of those tonight, hopefully get a few answers, and maybe there is some wisdom to glean from this ancient book and this guy that has revolutionized my life, at least. So tonight we're going to open up our Bibles to John's account of the life of Jesus. Now, some of the questions that I like to ask myself, or at least pop into my head, maybe I don't even like them, they just jump into my head because I'm a curious guy. When it comes to Jesus healing people, one of the questions I always asked was, why didn't he heal everybody? I am sure that there were people that died during the 3 years of Jesus' ministry. Why wasn't he there to save all of them? And what about the people that he did heal? What did they do with the rest of their lives? What was it like to be around them? What was it like to be them? And did those people eventually die? I'm assuming they're not still walking around on earth. I've never met Lazarus. And so, did Jesus really just raise this guy back from the dead just to have him die a couple of years later? Did he really heal all of those people just to have them die a couple of years later? Maybe they died of a different disease. Maybe they got hit by an ox cart. I don't know. Why was Jesus healing people? Was there something deeper than just the physical act of healing their bodies? I think there was. So, I want to look at a couple of these instances tonight, and we're going to start in John chapter 4, verse 46. I've got it here on my iPad. Feel free to open your paper Bible or whatever else you use to read Scripture. I'm going to be reading out of the New Living Translation. I enjoy it. It's a little smoother to read. This is what it says, John chapter 4, verse 46. As he, Jesus, traveled through Galilee, he came to Cana, where he had turned water into wine. There was a government official in nearby Capernaum whose son was very sick. And we heard that Jesus had come from Judea to Galilee. He went and begged Jesus to come to Capernaum to heal his son, who was about to die. And Jesus asked, "Will you never believe in me unless you see miraculous signs and wonders?" And the official pleaded, "Lord, please come now before my little boy dies." Then Jesus told him, "Go back home. Your son will live." And the man believed what Jesus said and started home. And while the man was on his way, some of his servants met with him, gave him the news that his son was alive and well. And he asked them when the boy had begun to get better, and they replied, "Yesterday afternoon, at about 1 o'clock, his fever suddenly disappeared." And then the father realized that that was the very time that Jesus had told him, "Your son will live." And he and his entire household believed in Jesus. This was the second miraculous sign that Jesus did in Galilee after coming from Judea. Now, there is a ton going on in these moments. There's all kinds of cultural stuff, there's all kinds of historical stuff, and there's way too much to get into tonight because I just want to focus on what happens when Jesus heals this man's son. Now, in your translation, it may say servant. The Greek word here can mean either of those. It's somebody who's intimately involved with someone who's a father figure, someone who relies on this guy as a father figure. We assume it's his son. It could have been a servant, probably his son, though. Two things should be very obvious when we read this. This guy was placing his hope for his young son's life in Jesus' hands. And when he heard that he was healed, he knew that he had placed his trust in Jesus, that it was well earned. It was life-changing, not only for this kid, obviously, but for this guy. In order to go to Jesus as an official, a royal official, and to seek a Jew's help, this guy who had been making waves, there took some serious humility. There took a leap of faith. This was a big deal, and my assumption was this guy had probably run through every single other option that was available to him. Being a royal official, he probably had money, he probably knew a lot of people, he had a ton of connections, and if anybody could have gotten help, it would have been this father for his son. And yet he ends up walking all the way to Jesus, hoping for a miracle. My assumption is when this guy got back home, he's one of the reasons that Jesus' reputation exploded in the cities. How could you ever stop talking about this? I think that would be the first thing that would come out of your mouth at every gathering, at every party, every time you met somebody. You would introduce your son and you would tell them the story of walking all the way and meeting with this guy and coming back and hearing that news. All of us have these little stories that we tell. There's no way in the world this wasn't that guy's story. It just had to be. Jesus' reputation begins to grow rapidly at this point. Thousands of people start showing up when he speaks. Thousands of people start showing up just when they hear rumor that he's going to be around. And my assumption is that this guy was the one that started this reputation building, at least when it came to the officials. Jesus' name really started gaining some traction at this point. In Matthew, Mark, and Luke, we're also told about Jesus healing Peter's mother-in-law. This is kind of towards the very beginning of Mark's gospel. And Jesus is collecting his disciples, and he's calling these men to him. And one of the things that we read is that Peter's mother-in-law is down and out, that she's got a fever. Now, fever is not a big deal these days. You take some Tylenol, some Advil, some ibuprofen. What do you take for a fever? All of those things. I take all of those things for a fever. Not all at once. Please consult a doctor. A fever was life-threatening for most of human history. And Peter, being as this was his mother-in-law, would have been the one who was responsible for this. It sounds like they're at his house. And she's down and out. She has this fever. And this would have kept Peter from the ministry. This would have kept him from following Jesus because he would have needed to make sure that he did his job as a good Jew to take care of those under his responsibility. And so they get to Peter's house, and Jesus sits down, and boom, she is up. And she's not just up and like, okay, the fever's broke, maybe she's going to be okay. No, she instantly starts cooking a meal. And that apparently is how you know she's healed and ready to go. And that's the point where Peter is released and allowed to jump in and follow Jesus. And for 3 years, this guy gives his life to Christ. And then, after the resurrection, begins to become the head of the church in Jerusalem, helping to found Christianity as we know it. Some of the biggest, most critical decisions in all of Christianity come down to this guy, which all come back to this point, where Jesus heals his mother-in-law, releasing him from responsibility and allowing him to head out on the road, to see things that he never imagined. I think that's pretty fun. Constantly, Jesus is healing those people. All kinds of people. And there seems to be no real rhyme or reason as to who gets it and who doesn't. a beggar on the side of the road, some lady who touches him in the middle of this crowd. But one of the things that constantly rings true as you read through the Gospels is that Jesus is always with the least of these. He is always healing the sick, the people who had been socially and physically and economically cast out of society and left for dead on the very edges of the wilderness. That's where you could find Jesus, touching the lepers, bending down and healing the beggars who were crippled, playing with the kids, running around and just being annoying for everybody else. And yet Jesus sees value in those people that society had cast aside, the people that had nothing to give anybody else. Jesus sees value in them. And when you begin going through all of these different moments when Jesus heals people physically, there seems to be some sort of a lesson that he's teaching about the nature and the character of God. Not just that he was amazing and he could heal all kinds of stuff, which was true, but there was something so much deeper, something far more valuable than just a physical healing. There was emotional, there was spiritual, there was relational healing as well. Things that we can't really do nowadays with all of the technology we had, and yet that seems to be the thing that Jesus was focusing on most. Whether it was a sin issue or a pride issue or a heart issue. I find it very interesting that Jesus didn't heal everybody. Jesus didn't instantly heal everyone or keep them all from death, although we know he could because he was doing this with the royal official's son. Didn't even have to be there, and it was just like, yep, it's done, taken care of. Why didn't he spend more time healing? Why didn't he use all of his power for the physical good of the people around him? He could have. I think that he was using these moments to make a grand divine point about the character of God, showing us not only that God cares about our physical, but that there is something even more valuable and more critical and more important and more eternal than just our physical bodies. I think the most obvious example of Jesus and his healing miracles comes to us on Easter morning as the women look into this empty tomb and find that there is no Jesus. This executed Messiah that they had risen from the dead, just like he said he would. But he didn't do it for his own benefit. He didn't do it for his own fame or his own fortune or his own place of power that he surely could have taken without a problem. He did it for us. He did it for our benefit. Not only did he live and die and raise again so that he could be glorified, he did it so that we could too. Jesus was passionate about the physical healing of the people around him. And he did a phenomenal job of healing the blind and the crippled and the sick. But he was far, far more passionate about the eternal destinies of the people around him. The life that came after life. And as incredible as the world is becoming, and all of the things that the scientists nowadays are standing on the shoulders of the people that came before them that did amazing things, and everything that's going to happen in the next couple of decades and centuries, and who knows where humanity is going to end up by the time we take off from this planet. Despite all of that advancement, there is still the reality that God not only cares about our physical, but there is something so much deeper and so much more critical and so much more eternal than just physical healing, as exciting and as amazing as that is. And as we continue to unlock these mysteries of God, some of which we don't even know are mysteries yet because we don't know they exist, there is one thing that will always remain critical. Something that we cannot do ourselves. Something that we will constantly and continually be incapable of, no matter how good we get at this stuff. And that is the heart condition that the prophet Ezekiel speaks of. And I will give them one heart, and a new spirit I will put within them. I will remove the heart of stone and give them a heart of flesh. The author of Hebrews says it again, quoting the prophet Jeremiah. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, declares the Lord. I will put my laws into their minds. I will write them on their hearts, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. They shall be a people stamped with the command of Jesus. Love one another. No matter what's going on in the world, no matter how much progress is made, no matter how terrible things get, no matter what you're hearing or what's going on around you, you have a single thing stamped on your heart. Love one another. We are to be a people who are called to look for and find the best in our neighbors, because that's what love does. Love looks for the best in people. It's not some silly, naive, everybody's good and everything's fine and I'm going to Pollyanna this thing. No, it is a grit determination to see people the way that Jesus saw people, to love people with a self-sacrificial love that he loved us with. Because that's who we are. That's what we were created to be. A type of people that isn't terrified of the world, who doesn't look around looking for things to be frightened of and scared from, and we've got to build this shelter that no evil can penetrate. That's not who we are. That's not who we've been called to be. We've been called to be a people who love, and you cannot love alone. You have to jump out. You have to do things. You have to get messy and dirty and grimy, and it's going to cost you something. And if our example is the example of Jesus, it cost him everything. And he didn't jump into this with his eyes shut, hoping that everything would be fine. He went in eyes wide open. He was fully aware of what it was going to cost. And he walked straight into it anyway. We will continue to make amazing discoveries on the medical front, on the technology front, on all of the fronts, because that's what people do. We create, we design, we explore, we research. We want to do amazing things, and we will, because that's what we've always done. And as we do, my hope and my prayer is that you will see the hand of God at work in that. And it might not be Jesus bending down and healing the paraplegic. It might not be the woman at the well. It might not be any of the amazing things that Jesus did. But you better believe that God's hand is at work in the world right now. And I don't know the details of all of this stuff, but I see it and I am amazed and I am grateful. And it is our responsibility as followers of Christ to make sure that that is used in a fashion that brings glory and honor to God. Whether that's with your own personal skills, your own career choices, the way that you vote, the way that you spend your money, your time, your effort, and your energy, how you spend your brain cycles as you take in news throughout the week. Use it in a way that brings honor and glory to God. Never forget that this life is not forever. This is not the end-all, be-all. And even the people that Jesus healed ended up dying. And that's okay, because this isn't where we live forever. It is only through the loving, the free, and the grace-filled act of Jesus Christ, his life, his death, and his resurrection, that this work of God takes that part of us which is eternal and has given life everlasting. And that is the ultimate miracle of healing.
Lord, I come. I And without you, I fall apart. You're the one that guides my heart. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Where sin runs deep, your grace is more. Where grace is found is where you are. And where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. So teach my song to rise to you when temptation comes my way. And when I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. And when I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you.
Happy Father's Day, Oasis. Have a wonderful week. We will see you guys next Sunday. Looking forward to a little bit of tweaks. So, we'll see you then.
Have a great week, Oasis.